The Other Side of Fear, a Backpacker's Memoir by Jenni Reavis. Unhidden Heroines Series, Book Number 1, Chapter 20, Yucca and Chicharron. I made it without Coke for a whole week. The next Friday night rolled around, and in spite of what I had just survived the weekend before, my body was still full-on Friday night mode, triggered with a desire to party. Just one beer, my body pleaded. I could no longer have a drink without using Coke also. Just smelling alcohol sent my body into a full-fledged response, as if I had done Coke. One beer kicked the Coke door wide open. I snuck down to the corner store for some snacks after firmly deciding that I would only get snacks, no beer. No shots, no cigarettes. I heard someone call out my name as I walked by, and when I backed up to see who it was, I found my neighbor and her friends all having a house party. They were watching a Colombian soccer game on TV and convinced me that since I was wearing my Colombian jersey, it was meant to be that I stay to party with them. Of course, I found it impossible to say no. Just 5 minutes won't hurt, I coaxed myself through the front door. I didn't have a TV in my apartment and loved to watch soccer games with the locals. 5 minutes turned to 30, and nobody would take no for an answer. Drinks flowed in my direction from all sides, not that I was firm about sending them away. It's just one drink, it's fine. My lying to myself began. One shot turned into two, which led to four, and then a group of men showed up. It wasn't long before I found out they were off-duty policemen dressed in casual clothes. And also, they were there to bring the drugs. And they weren't only coming to party hard, but to have sexual hookups with the women who were waiting for their arrival. As we all drank and snorted together, there was one guy who seemed to be infatuated with me. He told the other guys that I was off limits and tried to hold my attention the whole time. The harder he tried, the more annoyed I became. "You're married," he accused. I denied it. "You must be married, because otherwise, why wouldn't you give me a chance?" I scoffed at the sexist nature of this comment. So basically, as a woman, my options are to belong to a husband, or if I don't, to be up for grabs by any other man who lusts after me. After the group was several lines and shots into the party, the soccer game was replaced with sexy music. The men and women started to pair up and disappear into private rooms, and it was time for me to go. As I started for the door, the guy who had hit on me all night suddenly appeared from the shadows, where he had waited for my exit. He caught me by surprise, especially in my impaired state, and successfully pushed me down on a bed nearby and mounted me. "You'll love it, I promise you will," he breathed his liquor breath all over my face, and I had flashbacks of how Oscar's liquor breath had smelled. He had his dick out and thrust his hips, trying to find an opening around my shorts so that he could push himself into me. His arms and hands held me down. I could tell that he was not stronger than me. I could overpower him, but I had to be strategic and intentional about it. "Get the fuck off me, or I will get you the fuck off, and you won't like it," I warned him. He did not take my warning seriously and tried to push my legs apart with his knees. I silently counted down, and when I got to number 3, I channeled my energy and strength into bench pressing this guy off me. The momentum made him roll off the bed, hitting his head on the dresser. I ran home as fast as I could. The next morning, I thought about whether I should report what happened. Not only had I consumed drugs with the men, but I knew nobody would believe me. In South America, rape is always a woman's fault. It would have been my fault for wearing shorts, for being drunk, for making eye contact, for not being married, or for having participated in any dialogue with my would-be rapist. I had not been in contact with Sebas. I had avoided his calls and texts as much as everyone else's because of my shame at the second life I lived. I was ashamed that I broke my promise to him. I was ashamed that I made such a mess of things. I messaged him when I woke up, and he asked if I wanted to go have breakfast with him. Tears immediately began to flow down my cheeks. Yes, I did. A part of me longed to go back on vacation and restart everything so that my memories wouldn't be stained with being coked out and drunk. I wished that Sebas had a magic wand to fix everything I had messed up. I was about to go face him, and I was so scared that he would see the truth, although I knew I had to be honest with him. I was so tired of living a huge lie. More than anything, I was scared that he would reject me, which would confirm the painful belief that had always haunted me, that I was unlovable and unworthy of being loved. On my way to meet Sebas at our favorite breakfast place, I saw the neon green fleece jackets on a group of officers gathered by the fountain in the park. I saw him. The officer who had tried to rape me the night before. There was no way in hell I was going to let him have the last word. It seemed that the guy who assaulted me was a leader in the group of police officers. His uniform was a different color, and he led the conversation. As I approached the group, he refused to acknowledge me, but his officers redirected their attention from his speech to my presence. I stood right there next to my assailant and looked at him square in the face. He had a cut on his left cheek, and the left side of his face was swollen underneath his eye. That must have been from hitting his head on the dresser the night before. "Is there a gym here?" I asked him. The group of officers in front of him exchanged puzzled glances. One chimed in. "Yeah, there are two. One by—" I cut him off. "Not you, him." I pointed at my assailant, who was still insisting not to acknowledge me. "I'm asking him." Passerbyers started to stop and rubberneck. It broke cultural norms for a woman, particularly a foreigner, to approach a group of officers, especially to address the one in charge. He cleared his throat, still refusing to look at me in the eyes. He remained silent. I refused to break my stare at him. Then I finally said, "Since there are two gyms, as your officer just stated, I suggest that you start working out. That way, the next time that you try to rape a woman, she won't kick your ass." His eyes flashed black and his face turned red and purple. The silence among the officers could be cut with a machete. I raised my arms to show everyone my cuts and bruises. I looked like I had been in a boxing ring. "You see, he did this, and made the record show that he did not get what he wanted." I made my statement, and I knew my danger in stating it. They could take my passport and make it disappear, deny having ever seen it. They could write fake reports with fake evidence, saying I was involved in some criminal activity just to detain me. I was willing to face my consequences. If they knew one officer could try it and get away with it, I would be an easy target for anyone. Sebas took one look at me when I showed up for breakfast, and his face told me he knew everything. Besides, it was a small village, and I had not bothered to avoid shitting where I ate. Not only do people from small towns have nothing better to do than meddle in the lives of others, but as a foreigner, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I told Sebas everything that I had been so badly messing up over the past few months. I did not tell him what happened the night before, or about the confrontation that had just occurred in the park. He told me that he had been worried about me, but was waiting for me to figure some things out on my own. Apparently, my secret life was not so secret after all. I was in a cycle of destruction that was not only destroying me, but set everything around me on fire. There was no school that week because of a local holiday, and then a teacher's strike, so I had a few days off. I had to get caught up with my online classwork, write reports for my volunteer shift hours, and have a virtual meeting with Dr. D for his research, so that I could get into my graduate assistantship hours. I also knew it was time to face my consequences by telling the truth to my department, because I knew I couldn't keep up with my hours at the school and my work hours for the nonprofit. I had to make a radical change to get out of the rut I was in, or I would push myself 6 feet under. I had no idea what was on the other side of that veil of speaking my truth. One night, Sebas and I met, and while we were talking, he leaned forward and said, "There's a guy in the corner who's been recording you with his phone off and on for the past hour. Don't look now." At first I thought he was just playing with his phone, but now I know that he's filming you. Casually look over when you get up to go to the bathroom. I waited a couple minutes, and when I glanced over on my way to the bathroom, I saw that it was the officer who had tried to rape me a few nights before. When I got back to the table, I confessed the whole story to Sebas and told him how I confronted the officer on my way to meet him for breakfast. "Jenni, you can't talk to men like that here, especially not officers. They will not let you have the last word. From this point forward, it will not be safe for you to go hiking alone. Don't be alone outside at night, even when you can't sleep." It was time to walk away from my internship and come out with the truth to one of my leaders. Sebas and I both agreed that it was best to leave Hardin for a while until everything settled, and that leaving first thing in the morning before the sun came up was best, so that I could just disappear into thin air. Sebas went to the bus station with my passport info to buy me a ticket out. My bus would leave at 4:30 a.m. the following day for Medellin. We spent the rest of the day together laughing, playing, and packing. Whatever I had accumulated over the past few months in Colombia that wouldn't fit in my suitcase, it was time to let go of. I left a pile of clothes and books for Sebas to give to whoever needed them. I left him cash to pay someone to return the furnishing that had been lent to me back to their owners. I communicated with Hernan that I needed to leave and told him a short version about why, with a promise for more details later. I had to let him know since my apartment when it was in his name. He didn't meet me with judgment at all, but instead with tender concern, empathy and compassion and understanding. He was worried about me more than anything and asked me why I hadn't reached out in the midst of going through so much darkness, especially as a foreigner alone in a new country in a dangerous situation. He asked me to please let him know when I was safe and to keep him in the loop about what was going on. The next morning, Sebas and I walked together to the bus stop. There was a kiosk open for business for early morning travelers. When you get to Medellin, where will you go from there? He asked. To Santa Marta. Carlos said that I can stay in a hotel until he and his spouse move into their apartment, and then I can stay with them. He was so sad I was leaving, although I felt in my soul that I would be back to Hardin many times later in my journey. Want to do a shot before you leave? To toast your new path? You can't forget about me and the happy memories we have made here. Silly, we have so many more memories to make, I said. I will be back here many times, and you will travel with me away from here many more times. We did our double shots and shivered them off as pros do, downing hard liquor before the sun had even greeted the new day. No matter how far away you are, always remember that you are my Yucca and I am your Chicharron. His Forrest Gump analogy reminded me of the scene when Forrest was about to go fight in the Vietnam War, and Jenni's parting words to him were, Forrest, if you're ever in trouble, you don't have to be brave. You just run. You run far, far away. You promise? You just run. The bus driver loaded my stuff on the luggage rack. I climbed on board to claim my window seat and waved goodbye to Sebas from my window as we pulled out. And just like that, as a phantom does, I disappeared into the empty morning darkness to push beyond another veil into another unknown. Jenni and I, we sure knew how to run.